basic training was a breeze, then you either did one of two things. You tried really hard to work on yourself before you went into basic training, or you didn't try hard enough and you were just carried by your class. What's going on, guys? It's SK here. We're back here with another video. If you're new here, make sure you smash that subscribe button, like the video, help me with the algorithm. It means the world to me. So this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how the military changed me as a person. Seems that I get a lot of questions regarding the military. I think I've become like an army guy of the Discord group that I'm part of, which is pretty cool. But nonetheless, I'm happy to just give like a little summary on how I changed as a person from the ages of, I was 18 actually when I first joined the army, up until when I left at 26. No, correction, 27. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down by little segments and timeline each point and just talk a little bit about how I changed as a person. So let's roll it back. Let's roll it back to 2013. I believe I was 19 at the time. Yeah, that was a trip. I was 19 years old, and that's when I actually joined the army for the first time. I was part of the reserves. I was in college at the time, and I didn't really do much with my life. I was just like a typical teenager, just wanted to play video games, wanted to hook up with girls, go out with my friends, play basketball, just, do the usual things that teens do. Although I don't really know what teens do these days anymore. But it was definitely a decent point for me to, learn new skills. It was pivotal, actually. That's where my journey started. Emotionally, I was very impulsive. I used to act on everything that I thought of immediately in the moment, extremely hot-headed and quite argumentative, but also at the same time, I was a bit of a pussy, I'm not gonna lie. I would talk a big game. I would say and chat the most amount of shit. I'd be the dog with the loudest bark, with zero bite. So action also was a very hard thing for me to take, because it meant that I had to then, put myself out there and risk being exposed, and then put myself in positions where, if I failed, I'd have to deal with the consequences of my actions that led to that failure. And because being someone who just couldn't accept flaws or accept the fact that I had flaws at the time, it was just something that I just found very hard to deal with. But the army really helped me there. I was at a reserve unit that specialized in infantry skills, so a lot of the training there was very, very, very rigorous. It was very physically demanding, and also it was like a completely new culture that I was put into. People from all sorts of lives, from different backgrounds and different settings. There were people who had been to jail a couple times and were in the military now. Because the army does this is a good thing about the army. The army does give you second chances. The army does give you the sort of last stand, if you will. I'm using a Call of Duty reference here, right? That perk, last stand, where you take a couple of hits and you fall to the ground instead of just immediately dying, and then you have the chance to get some shots off and get yourself back up on your feet. So the military does afford that opportunity to anybody who does reach out for it. Now, me coming from a fairly sheltered background, I was in absolute awe. There were people who had done far more than I had ever thought that I'd ever accomplish in my life, and it was really intimidating. I remember being in phase 1 training. It was broken into slots in the reserves. So the reserves is like a part-time sort of like soldier training program, if you will, where you do your phase 1 training, which is split into 2 blocks. It's known as phase 1 alpha and then phase 1 bravo. And then after you graduate, that's basic training, right? So phase 1 is known as basic training. After you graduate from basic training, you then move into your specialist training, which is phase 2. Now, I was at my camp in Surrey, Purbright, ATC Purbright, and I remember staying in those old, those old like World War II type of billets. They look like mini hangars, and it gave off the whole like army feel. It's everything that you see in the movies. You see all the guys like forming up for inspection outside, getting ready to go out for drill and go on their marches, etc. So I was like, yeah, this is cool. But the thing that was super intimidating was the fact that there were people who were my age as instructors. There was a guy there, I think he was like 20, 21, and he was a corporal, which is the second rank, a full corporal or a full screw for my military people watching this. He was a full screw, and that is the second rank in the hierarchy of the military. And the roles and responsibilities are quite high there. You're basically a team leader. You're responsible for a small group of men or women, and it's a shitload of responsibility, to be honest. Then this guy was already like out there. He had done like 2 tours of Iraq. He'd been out to Afghanistan, and was getting ready to train for the Special Air Service, I believe. So he was getting ready to go full SAS mode. Yeah. So this guy was going to go and hang out with Captain Price at the age of 22, 23. That's insane. But that just goes to show that life just happens when it happens, and you've got to roll with it. Now, for myself, I found that it was very, very hard trying to assimilate into that life. But there's one thing that I always wanted to do since I was a kid, was be in the military. I wanted to, provide some form of service. So that lasted for about 3.5 years. So I was, 1922. From the ages of 19 to 22, I was in the reserves, and I didn't really do like any combat deployments or anything like that because I didn't actually fully qualify, to be honest. I didn't finish my phase 2 training. I was still in college, and also had a very like lackluster approach to life. But everything changed when I turned 22 and I joined the full-time regular army, and my specialty there was medic. I wanted to go in as a medic because I was always interested in medicine. I wanted to actually be an army doctor, but I didn't possess the grades. It's not that I'm not an academic. I am quite academically inclined. I was just very lazy. I just couldn't be asked. I really, really hated the idea of sitting down for exams and writing out test papers. And yeah, my attention span with something that required me to focus to that level on something that I didn't find very enjoyable. I mean, anybody who doesn't find anything enjoyable is going to tap out, and they're going to think that, what's the point of this? So I didn't get the A levels to allow me to go to university and then get my bursary to go into medicine. So the next step for me there was to go in as a soldier, because that is an officer rank. I went in as a soldier to learn medical skills, and the idea at the time was to progress through the ranks and eventually commission as an officer. And I had to redo basic training. But this was full-time regular army basic training, basically all condensed over a period of 3 months. And that was probably one of the best and most challenging times of my life, because that's where, you're really put to the grindstone, and it's sort of like you're just driven to that edge constantly. And I know there are going to be some people who are watching this and they're going to think, basic training was a breeze. If basic training was a breeze, then you either did one of 2 things. You tried really hard to work on yourself before you went into basic training, or you didn't try hard enough and you were just carried by your class. There is no mid-ground. You will always find something to struggle when it comes to basic training, stage 1, like phase 1 army, or any form of military training there, because they effectively break down the very civilian side to you, and they then start to rebuild you and repurpose you to be, the smart, disciplined, well turned out, highly functional, operational. What was it that Captain Todd said? Oh, he was Lieutenant Todd at the time. It was to produce an operationally effective soldier. There we go. That's by the book. Those 2 words there being paraphrase, operationally effective. That just says it all, doesn't it? It has routine, discipline, functionality, controlled aggression, aggressive, really working on the aggression within you to basically get you ready for war. It just oozes military, it just oozes regimented behavior. And that's where I really started to learn a lot about myself. I remember being put through my paces because I always hated running. I remember we went on a 6-mile run, and my section commander at the time, he knew that I was heavily fatigued from the weeks of training prior to that. And he knew that I was going to struggle. So he deliberately put me in the middle of the pack. Put me in the middle of the pack with the stronger runners. And he said, whatever happens, don't let him fall off. I remember Corporal Kenny said, oh, he's jacking. And I thought, fuck, man, like this is really tough. I could give up if I wanted to, but at the same time, it's not an option, because when you've got PTIs growling at you, you've got the other guys who are struggling. I mean, I wasn't even unfit. I just hated running, and it was just completely mental. I just would always psych myself out the moment I felt fatigue. But I was in the middle of it. I was in the thick of like my first ever battle with myself, like my real battle with myself to achieve a goal. Because the reality of the situation is that it's do or die, right? You either carry on and you complete the task, or you don't, and then you get backtrooped, or worse, you get thrown out because you lack the drive and the ability to push yourself beyond that wall. And that's what you need to join, an organization like the military or any form of uniformed public service. I thought it was a pretty grueling but very necessary point there. And I read this quote, and I've heard this quote actually loads of times, even on Hamza's channel. He says that hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And now in hindsight, even though I wasn't thinking that while I was running at this, at that point, but I definitely had that feeling of, choose what kind of person you want to be. What kind of man are you going to be? You're going to be the man that, yes, you're hurt. Yes, you're tired, but realizing that most of the battle is just mental, and then pushing through that, as opposed to being the person that's going to tap out. And when I look at 19-year-old me who would tap out at the first sign of resistance, I made a conscious decision there and then that I was going to stick with that pack. Also because pack mentality, right? Nobody ever wants to be the outcast. Nobody wants to be the person that's the weak link. But that's how the military operates. They single out the weak links and get rid of you. And I told myself that no matter what happens, even if on an exercise, if I fall over and break my leg, I'm gonna keep going until I'm either cast out or I die. And that's very extreme. I mean, cue the Sigma grind set music if you want.
Missed the part where that's my problem.
But that's how it is. That's the reality of being in an organization like that. You have to really adopt that killer instinct, and that's what basic training is all about. They sharpen that killer instinct. It's like, are you gonna do this even though you're hungry, you're tired, you're cold? Because you're gonna be in situations where you're gonna have to just push through. I remember being on exercise, and I mean, this was sick. Like, this was honestly one of the sickest moments, but it was also pretty fucking depressing if you think about it. In the sense that you're being, we're basically being bugged out. Bugged out is basically your harbor area gets attacked, like your camp gets attacked, and then you have to basically evacuate and return fire to the enemy and everything, and you basically just need to withdraw. You just get the hell out of there. And this was amazing. Like, I remember it was like the height of summer 2016. And we were on the training ranges at Sandhurst. And boy, this was like something out of a Michael Bay movie, I swear to God. So we were extracting from one location, moving to the next to get away from the enemy, and it started thundering, and the cloud activity was so thick. It was like you saw the thunder come through the clouds, if that makes sense. It was like those World War II movies where the planes are like, the bombers are flying over the cities, and then you see all the flak just basically like popping off around the planes, and the clouds are really thick, and there's just like thunder and lightning, and it was just so like aesthetic and atmospheric. It really felt like I was being evacuated from a war zone. And then the skies just opened up and it started raining so heavy. Like within seconds we were all just drenched. And I remember we were we were moving from point to point. It was like, I think a total of like 4 miles. We were just on the move and constantly getting shot at. And we ended up like sitting down in this it was like a fake sort of like safe space for us to sit down and just get ready to sort of decompress and regroup and everything. But then we got contacted again, so we had to bug out from that tree line and run into another area. And it was just so cool, man. It was like something out of a movie. And I just remember thinking, damn, like this is this is what it's all about. Even though later on I realized that it's completely different. Being in the military is also very much like a 9-to-5 job, but basic training is probably one of the best experiences that anyone who's ever served will have. And if you the audience decide that you're going to go into this field, then you'll definitely experience your own aspect of like alley cool shit, basically, to summarize it. And yeah, I mean, that was basically my point of changing my mindset into having that very sharpened sort of a killer instinct. You really need to just go for it. You need to really push yourself if you want to achieve something. At least that was the foundation that got instilled in me, because when we moved from basic training into my phase 2 training, I'm not sure what happened. I think it was probably the furthest I'd been away from home for an extended period of time. And now I'm in Litchfield, Birmingham with some of my mates, right? All the people who were going in to become medics, who were training to be medics, we all got stationed at the same camp there, because that's the camp that trains all their specialists to become medics. And I remember just feeling so low. And I think for me, that was the time where I really got like mentally in my head. So I was just like in this void of just constant self-doubt, purely because like all my safety nets were taken away, all my comforts were taken away. My family was like 200 miles away. And yeah, I really had to like start learning to become fully autonomous and independent, self-sufficient. At least with basic training, I was constantly engaged. Like every day you were doing something, and they were full days. You're waking up at like 5 in the morning and only going to bed at 11, and you did that for 3 months. So my mind was constantly occupied with that. But with phase 2 training, you get a lot more downtime. It's a bit more relaxed in that sense. And yeah, it gave me a taste more of like what normal life is. And that's when I had this belief, or rather this thought, not so much a belief, but my thought of, do people really want freedom that much? Or is giving freedom actually more like disabling than enabling to people? Because the more freedom you have, the more time you have to just kind of sit and think. If you have like an anxious attachment style, or if you have like an anxious mind, if you get sort of worked up pretty easily. And I was worked up by a lot of things. Again, like for my course, when I got there, I thought that I was just going to do like a 6-month program, but it turned out that I was loaded onto a prototype course, basically, that was offering the people that graduated the ability to actually practice frontline medical treatment as EMTs. So that actually gave us a qualification right off the bat, which helped me in the long run, but it was like 1.5 years long, and it was a foundation medical degree. Now that's something I'd never even come remotely close to doing, because in school I didn't really pay that much attention. I just didn't really care. I didn't really care that much, It was just the absolute shock and the mental overload, because it was highly academic. It was a huge test, like another testing ground for me. And that part was very, very interesting, because that was my moment that gave me the opportunity to really show myself that, what, I actually am capable. That's when I rediscovered that I am actually academic, because up until that time I thought that, no, I'm just crap. I can't do anything remotely involved with maths. I'm not the best when it comes to, paying attention to detail, even though going into the military, doing basic training, that's all it is. Everything is attention to detail. So I started to prove myself wrong. But in proving myself wrong, I like almost gave myself like a minor identity crisis, because up until that time, I thought that I was useless at so many things that I found that I was good at. Although it was extremely stressful, because I remember failing like all my pharmacy modules because I psyched myself out. Again, I thought I'm useless at maths, and I'm a massive believer in, you are what you think, and you do affirm and manifest these things. And yeah, that was extremely stressful for myself and my family, because I remember talking to my mom and speaking to my parents, just saying, yeah, so I'm resitting 5 exams on Friday. That week for pharmacy, when it was test week, if we finished all of our tests on the Thursday, we were given the Fridays off. I failed every single one of them, and I had to basically resit all of them on Friday. And they all had, they all involved different elements of testing methods. So pharmacy was heavily like maths oriented. I remember one was I was looking through like the BNF, which is basically like the British National Foundation for like pharmacological drugs and pharmaceuticals and all that stuff, and dosages and everything. And that test was basically everything that I saw in the textbook. I needed to basically copy it down verbatim. Every single text, every single bit of text. And I know, like how do you fuck that up? It's literally just copy from the book. But when you're mentally so like trapped in a simple thought process, that just fogs your basic mechanical actions. And that's one thing that I realized about myself at phase 2 training, and I undid that. So that was a pretty good stint, to be fair. Very challenging, very testing. I hope at this point now you can see that there is a recurring theme here, that you only truly get to know yourself, and you only really start to develop when you push yourself outside your comfort zone. And when you do that, you will actually shock yourself with the things that you pick up, or the things that you just take to or gravitate to naturally. It's like a completely different side of you just like engages, and that instinct just kicks in. I believe that's what that killer instinct is. It goes beyond just being able to be aggressive and attack and, take a life or whatever. It's the ability to almost like drive back that preconceived notion that you are something, and just adopt and chameleon and just become what you need to in order to survive and make it to the next stage, or make it through to the next day. And that's something that just stuck with me after that point. Then I got to my unit up in Colchester. And that was a very, very cool and interesting, and that was where a lot of personal development from an emotional state took place. So my main takeaway from there really was I got into my first like proper long-term relationship with a girl there. She was one of the local girls. She was a teacher, and that was a very interesting relationship, because I started to see the male-female dynamics a lot more. And I was like fully like involved, living with her. She was living with me at the base and everything. Honestly, it felt like its own 9-to-5 job. So I get when people are saying, like, relationships, I just want to be in a relationship. I want to be in a relationship. I realize that it's a lot of commitment. There's a lot of compromise that's needed. This is extending beyond just like your typical like high school relationship where you you meet up, you go to McDonald's, you buy her a McFlurry, like you kiss, you cuddle, you go and like mess around and everything. You know how it rolls. But this took it to like, okay, so now we're talking about moving in together. We're talking about managing bills. We're talking about working out like work schedules, car sharing, like little things like that I just never thought about. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, this is insane. But it was fun while it lasted. I mean, I enjoyed it. It came with its own tests. There was a lot about myself that I learned. There's a lot about her that I learned, and also learning about how men and women interact, and how in order for us to coexist, you really need to know yourself. Like, you have to be so comfortable with being yourself, and also comfortable being able to voice your opinions without One, the fear of like what you're saying affecting the other person negatively or offending, because you have to speak your truth. Like you have to just come from a point where you're just being true to yourself and letting the other person know who you really are. Because if you try and cover that up, something will slip. You know, even the most like well thought out, like best conceived cover story can seem seemingly flawless, but something will just drop one day, even if it's like years down the line, and you'll just undo everything and sabotage everything. And that's something I saw with some of my other friends who were like dating multiple girls and like really like living that playboy life. With me, I was in this like long-term relationship. I was like fully engaged in it. I started to really understand the whole like jokes about, yeah, every time a guy like finds a girl or he meets a girl and everything, then like his boys just kind of take a seat on the back burner. And yeah, I mean, at the time I couldn't see it. I just thought, oh yeah, well, you know, I'm just spending time with my girl. I see my friends every day at work and all that stuff. But the reality is like in relationships, especially codependent relationships, you spend like an increasing amount of time. You know, the time you spend together increases, and then you eventually become so like caught up in each other's space. You start to like adopt each other's habits. You start to like really see behind the cracks also, because for some reason everybody seems to think that they need to be like on their A game from the get-go. How about you just be yourself? But that's something I learned in hindsight. Yeah, that was a trip. I mean, that was a really big trip there. Emotionally speaking, my mindset also started to adapt and change a bit more. You know, now I'm in like a full work routine. I was in like a 9 to 5 job, and yeah, I enjoyed it for the most part. I had my own issues. I picked up like my first like very minor injury, but it affected me like a great deal in the long run. I ran the risk of developing like a full fracture on my foot when I was doing one of the runs there, because the unit I went to was a very like physically like, I don't want to use the word elite, but I know for a fact that people at that regiment would definitely see themselves as elite, because they're meant to be like the tip of the spear, or the tip of the syringe, as I like to say, for the medics there. Yeah, being part of the airborne unit at 16 Med was honestly one of the coolest camps I've been to, one of the coolest experiences I had. I wish that in hindsight I had a bit more grit to myself to just kind of push through and not let words affect me so much. There were a few people that I worked with who had opinions of me, and I really cared. I really cared a lot about what they thought about me, and it just used to drive up this anxiety in me. Then on top of that, I got injured, and that even, you know, that just increased the anxiety more, because I'm quite a fit person normally, but for a large part of the time that I was there, I actually was downgraded. I was injured, so that really took its toll on my mental health and my well-being there. Again, that was another test, you know, another massive test, and it always comes back to just, you know, how bad do you want it, or like, what are you gonna do? You know, are you gonna push yourself through, and are you gonna basically just prevail, or are you gonna give in and be a victim of your circumstance? But the truth is, like, you always have a choice. So this is me at age 23, 25. I was 25 at that point. So my last sort of station was when I got sent and posted to a like a medical clinic in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, in a place called Salisbury. Salisbury is like a town that is about 180 miles south from where I was in Colchester. So from London, the capital, it's about 90 to 100 miles south there in the countryside. And me being a bit of a city boy, I felt a little out of place. You know, I was like, what the hell? There's hardly anything to do here. Now this was like the last hurdle for me. And that's what ultimately led up to me signing off from the military. But the tests were enormous. I mean, professionally speaking, I was in the most like responsibility driven fields there. You know, I was in charge of like 300 people as like a lone medic, right? I was a private medic working in this GP basically, and I was seeing to people on a day-to-day basis. I was looking after their physical injuries, discussing little bits of like mental health with them, doing referrals. I was basically like in full GP mode, working with doctors, nurses, senior clinicians, and then other medical soldiers who had also done the same course as me, and others who had just been in the game for a long time. So I gained a wealth of knowledge there, and a lot of my medical skills from there actually got like sharpened and brushed up because it was a completely patient-facing clinical posting. So that was pretty cool. The struggles that I faced there had to do with isolation, because I was the only one that I knew there for a very long time. And because of the department that I was joining, which is like DPHC, which is effectively just, I was a medic that was assigned to the clinic itself, whereas other medics were assigned to units and like regiments or batteries. So because it was an artillery camp, so they have like different names, but it's the same thing, right? That's just the army. Also, the culture is also pretty different there too. So I was like assimilating to this new area, having come from pretty bougie camp, not gonna lie, to a camp that was like in the process of being renovated. But then I got put up in one of those like older blocks, and yeah, like on my corridor I was the only guy, which was great because it meant that I got my peace of mind. But me being like the only one in the building most of the time as well when I was staying, it took its toll on me mentally, because you're just alone in like that room with very few facilities. Yeah, so my camera just died. Brilliant. We're back up now. So the last point I was talking about was the facilities. So the facilities at this camp were so limited compared to the ones that I had before. In my previous camp, it was like living in uni accommodation. I had access to an electric hob, I had kettle, we had George Foreman's, we had grillers, even like barbecues outside for us to all just like socialize. And yeah, it was honestly like amazing. And not to mention that the fridges were also quite big too. In this camp, it was so limited. We had literally like, it was just a kettle, I believe it was a kettle and a microwave. And you know what the worst part was? So the health and safety staff there was saying that it's perfectly adequate for us to sustain a healthy lifestyle because we can boil chicken in a bowl in the microwave and make pasta by boiling it in a kettle. How fucking retarded does that sound? Like, what kind of basic bitch setup is that for soldiers who are supposed to be training to like go to war, or like you just go about your daily routine? And this is home for quite a lot of people, because that camp specifically had a lot of Fijian guys who came over, and they were like doing their training, and there were loads of like Commonwealth guys there too. So that was their home. Like they couldn't stay anywhere, and like unless they met someone or they had family that was in the UK. But even then, most of the time they like lived up north or like somewhere in the main city. So it was just a hassle to travel back and forth. And yeah, it absolutely blew my mind. Like that was insane. And I went from having all those facilities and all those perks essentially to going like almost back down to basics. But the main reason why that was the case was because the catering company called Sodexo wanted to basically make the most profit from having their people like go there, having the troops go and eat there. And I remember like how they still used to overprice just like omelets and shit. It was like £4 for like a 3-egg omelet. And I was just like, that doesn't even make sense. It's not even like £1 per egg. That would make sense if the eggs were like large and you got like a lot more for it. But yeah, anyways, that's my rant about the catering staff there. But the overall experience was just like a full 9 to 5, like a very busy 9 to 5 like GP life, which is good because it gave me the ability to really like challenge myself, clinically speaking, and built a lot of confidence within my skills. Emotionally, I also started to mature a lot more. I became a bit more like responsible with, well, just with the job that I was doing, and I also started to take a bit more ownership for everything that I was also going through. But at the same time, mentally, it did take its toll on me because I was just in a room in a brick building by myself for most of the time. And I'm a bit of an extrovert, so I like, meeting people, talking to people. Plus, the camp reception there wasn't the greatest, and yeah, it was pretty challenging. Plus, I was also still a little bit into like the degenerate lifestyle, so I was just like playing video games a lot of the time when I was just sat in there because there was also no one else to talk to. And yeah, it just like took its toll, and I started to feel a little gray, I started to feel as though I was like washing out a bit and burning out a bit. So yeah, that was one of the main reasons why I also said, okay, I need to stop, because I reached a point where it didn't serve me anymore. I felt as though my purpose had changed, and I mean, I still stuck through there for like a good year and a bit, but after that I thought, okay, I need to reassess. I need to really have a word with myself and be prepared to, step into the unknown yet again. And that's exactly what I did when I decided to sign off. Because the thing about the military is, it is a great place. It is a great like proving ground and testing ground to constantly put yourself through your paces, move to new locations, meet new people, try out new jobs, and see like how different things run in different camps, because they all have their own cultures, and then you just kind of see what works best for you. But on a more like holistic scale, it really pushes your thoughts and your opinion of yourself to all new heights. There's so many things that I went through like a baptism by fire, and that's just my personal experience. Because I came, like I said, I came from a very sheltered lifestyle where responsibility just wasn't really something that I had to worry about too much. But with the military, it's everything. It's the be all and end all. So it was a very steep like J curve in terms of my own like personal development, but it was a good one nonetheless. And I'm just gonna say this as I wrap up the video, that I know a lot of the experiences I mentioned seem to be quite like hard, grueling, and like negative. But I don't want you to see it that way. I don't see it that way. Everyone's got their own sort of like mental, physical, emotional composition that they start out with. But just like a game, you can just level them up. You can level up those points just by putting the work in and really like doing the hard work on yourself. That's part of what this channel is all about. Just really push yourself to be the best version of yourself, and you will definitely achieve that in an environment like the military, because you're constantly going to be tested. You're going to be put through your paces where, yeah, like things are going to get really tough. Like you'll be looking forward to going home to your family or your girlfriend or whatever one weekend, and then all of a sudden you'll be told by the troop sergeant or whoever, oh yeah, I need you to stay here because so and so's gone sick or whatever, and you're on guard. And then you're just like, oh, okay, you don't have a choice. Like, you can't debate that. You can't just say, oh, well, no, I'm not going to do it. Like you could do in a 9-to-5 job outside of the military. Because the worst case scenario is they'll be like, all right, cool, well, you're fired. Like, don't bother coming back to work. And in the military, it's not so simple as that. You get punished for it and still be made to do the job that, you've been trying to get away from, or you just say no to. Because it's that very authoritative, like disciplinarian lifestyle that you live, and you see how that starts to shape you a little bit, or a lot, depending on how deep you go into it. You could choose to take things away from that. There's always a choice. You can choose to say, yeah, I really struggled and I had the worst time in the army or whatever, or you can say those are really tough times, those are really challenging times, but they were great growth opportunities. And that's the way that I look at it, because that's how I became who I am now, and why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I feel more and more comfortable just being vulnerable in front of a camera and being able to talk about my experiences and put that out there for the wider audience to learn from. So if you're seriously considering joining the military, or if you want an insight to that, bear in mind that was just my take in the relatively short time now I think about it. I mean, 7 years collectively isn't really a long time. It is and it isn't, depending on how you look at things. But yeah, I mean, that was my experience. And just remember that you always have a choice. There's always a choice when it comes to making a decision about something and seeing how you feel. But yeah, that's it. So if you like that video, please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.